Like me some comments? I really do. I like me some comments? Don't care about you. I like me some comments?
So, here we are then. I mean, what can a northern muppet like me, no, it's puppet, isn't it? The Henson organisation were very clear about that. Puppet. What can a northern puppet like me possibly tell all you fancy pantaloon, reckon you know it alls out there, alt about alt? Especially alt like comics. Ooh, I think you'll find that was actually in the alternate universe reverse timeline, clearly indicated due to the yellow stripe on the cape being slightly askew. Blah 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 blah. You flipping nerds. But while you're thinking about that, think about this. What does a 5-year-old Duke Barboy pick up from his local paper shop when his mum tells him he can choose a comic for the first time? I never done that before, man. Where do you start? Never the biggest comic selection up at Bill and Babs on Abel Street, but still. I quickly flick through a good half dozen before coming across something football related. And for all our friends across the Atlantic there, it'll be a cold day in Deviltown before I start calling it soccer. Alright? You've got your football and I've got mine. So in addition to switching the subtitles on Sharpish, so you can halfway understand what I'm rambling on about, you can get used to that and all. Right. Unnecessary confrontational unpleasantness aside, and now I've ostracised any purely inquisitive viewers into switching me off again, I'll crack on with good stuff. I were well on the ascent to a swiftly building obsession with football back in 1978. So clocking this dude in one of my comics, sold it to me hook, line and sinker, and I were up from then. Every week for a good few years I were up there for me Beano fix, and while my embryonic interest in illustration spun off in all sorts of directions from there, this was where it all started really. This and my Mr. Men books, any road. Now granted, flicking back through this stuff now, none of it's rocket science as to why I were drawn to it, and I'm far too close to try and see it objectively anyway, but what is there to see really? A young lad out there kicking a ball around with his pals, which is what I spent most of my time doing till I got to my teens at least. Ballboy were everything that comics needed to be to a lad that age. Daft and silly. Funny in bits and all. Only a page long, so it never outstayed its welcome. But it were about football, man. That's what got me turning to see what BB were up to before all else week in, week out. Always first thing that I flicked through for annuals and all on Christmas Day. Which from then on were now a fixture in my present list. Like for the next 7 or 8 years until I pretended I were too old or something daft like that. This set the bar high, did this, man. I loved it. Yeah, Bulletproof Coffin, and here's where it starts. Top front cover for starters, and yeah, I know, you shouldn't judge your book, blah 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 blah, but the thing is you should, sometimes. And this is one of them. What sort of dullard wouldn't want to see what within this? Quite a well-aimed first-person narrative kicks off in regular fashion, with a cleaner called Steve talking us through him and his good pal and colleague Joey Spinoza eyeing up some spooky old gaff before dipping a few choice bits, including some tasty looking comics, as the owner recently shuffled off yon mortal coil. But then they clock how either being eyed up by a pair of Men in Black fanatics and back at her home that Steve shares with an overly aloof missus and the standard pink dog and set of curmudgeon twins. Our hero starts leafing through one of his finds, which looks to me like some kind of Boss Residence LP sleeve, man. The various comics he found then set the scene for a nice plot setup, as the old characters they feature rock up en masse to talk our hero into joining their throng and whatnot. In an old costume and some Boss war machine that looks like some prototype Masters of the Universe battle tank put together by your man Spycore, and soon enough gets set about by that age-old classic combo of deadheads and dinosaurs before his cut goose gets saved at the very last sec with some loincloth lassie who's bopped away clean out of a Motley Crue video. At long last the electric prunes get referenced. About time. As our man then tries to make sense of it all before getting another comic through the post that seems to ape his dreams. And then it all starts turning in on itself, skipping through time and various dimensions, and the alternate realities of the stories in stories of the comic books this dude half-inched. Fairly meta, which is neither here nor there unless it's well done. And this is, I think, if you can get behind it a bit. Some criticism I've seen seems to take aim at how half of this series is set inside the comic books this dude is reading, and fair enough that's the case, but it works. Well enough anyway, assuming you're willing to put something in yourself and see it through to end of what is a nicely paced six-parter that doesn't take itself too seriously, really. Give it a do, man. Now look, before you all start shooting your gobs off with all this like, oh bloody hellfire, I thought this would be a sackload of bobbins, but flipping heck, I didn't expect him to start running out of ideas so quick. My expectations were painfully low, but they exceeded this. I mean, 2 out at first 3 being weekly football stories, what a pocket full of tripe, man. I just shut it. Shut it. Just shut your daft traps for 2 minutes and listen. But what I'm trying to say here is all that nonsense that you've just been spouting, judging how Billy's Boots and Ballboy are basically the same thing due to the similar subject nature, well, that's pretty much how them who don't get comics at all, who don't really wanna get comics, see the entire industry as like a narrow little genre rather than an entire medium, in the same way that like music is or film is or whatever. And don't get me started on TV, man. Every little Muppet's got their own show now, haven't they? Like I said, Ballboy were the first classic one-pager that sucked me in, but it were Billy's Boots that had a lot more depth in comparison to that, especially to a kid that age. It were usually full colour for starters, over 2 pages usually, and the storylines were teased out over weeks and weeks on end, which to a kid is like, you know, a really, really, really long time, isn't it? Yeah, it has funny bits, but it weren't played for cheap laughs either. There were a bit of like pathos involved. There were a bit of adventure. I mean, yeah, you could argue that the cliffhangers got a bit samey after a year or two, but I guess there's only so many ways a young lad can lose a pair of magic football boots that used to belong to a long dead legend. But again, gateway strip for me. Took me on to other stuff, more of which we'll have a gander at sometime if you behave yourselves. I've been looking at feedback and, is this the bit where I'm supposed to say, oh, please like my video, please share it, will ya? Oh, do this. I'm not going to do that, am I? You goons. Latest taters.
Leave me some comments.